Right, guys, another signature hand clap for the start of episode 6. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about overcoming fuck ups. And whilst we're on the topic, overcoming our own fuck up, this is the second attempt at recording this episode. Because yesterday afternoon, Ollie and I tried to record it, and Ollie's laptop decided to go to approximately 1 million degrees in the sunshine, which obviously I have no understanding of that living in Scotland. I have no comprehension of what that might actually be like. So yeah, full disclosure, this is round 2. We did record probably the first 15 or 20 minutes. So thanks for bearing with us. It's not a technologically advanced show, this. Maybe one day we'll get the right technology. So overcoming fuck-ups. We figured this was quite a good topic and probably more prevalent now than ever before, in terms of maybe not that people are fucking up more, but maybe that people are being given more opportunity to fuck up, or at least different opportunities to fuck up. I don't know how many times you can say fuck in the start of a YouTube video, but I think I'm on for a record. So yeah, the opportunities are far more frequent at the moment, or at least there's a different set of opportunities to mess up. With that different set of opportunities, people are obviously having to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I think, at least in my own opinion, therein lies the problem, is people's inability to improvise, adapt, and overcome. So yeah, effectively, one of the things I've been dealing with my clients is not only the actual practice of fucking up, but the psychology that goes with making mistakes, and how we can start to turn positives into negatives into positives, and effectively move forward and learn from our mistakes. And therein lies the magic bullet for me, is that you have the option. 3 options I always tell my clients. You have option number 1, where you basically do nothing off the back of a mistake. You just can get on with things, and that's not a bad option. That is option number 1. Option number 2 is you end up in a downward spiral, and the fuck up actually is a gateway drug or a gateway object to further negative spiral into more failure. Or option number 3, which would be the preference of both Ollie and I, would be that you learn from the mistake and you come back stronger. And that's one of the things that we've been speaking about with my clients this week. So it's kind of the premise of this entire episode will be that. And I suppose with that, Ollie, I will chuck you the proverbial hot potato. How are you, mate? You all good?
Yeah, all good, man. All good. I remember obviously yesterday, and obviously the chat's going to be slightly different, but yesterday you brought up a really cool thing that I hadn't heard of before, and that was like the idea of falling up. I really like that. You said, what was the book that you got that from? Sorry.
So the book was The Happiness Advantage. Yeah, I did open with that yesterday. That's a good point. That was actually a good, and then you had a good point off the back of it. We were in a good flow, to be perfect.
We were, and I feel like there's that danger of almost trying to replicate exactly what we were talking about, and that could sound a little bit scripted. And what we do here obviously isn't scripted. It's just like an informal discussion. We have like a vague idea of what we're going to talk about, and then we just kind of go with it, and it works well. But without trying to replicate exactly what we were speaking about yesterday, I think off the back of what you just opened up with, I then went on to talk about having context around the fuck up itself, and actually trying to have a kind of clear idea as to what kind of actions you need to take based on the severity of the issues that you've run into. Somebody who maybe has eaten a snack that they shouldn't have eaten and gone over their calories ever so slightly is going to be largely different to somebody who has spent the whole week sitting on the sofa ordering takeaways and just completely hit the fuck it button. So you do need to have some context within the topic of discussion. But we spoke yesterday about the biggest things that we're seeing our clients maybe struggling with right now. And I think you touched on the fact that it's largely coming down to nutrition, right? Because, we're stuck at home, and, the choice to overeat is there in front of us the whole time. So what's the things that you've been doing at the minute with your clients to kind of negate that, or at least equip them to handle that situation a little bit better?
For sure, buddy. So I think that's a good point. I also forgot about that from yesterday, and that we largely said that the training aspect is less of an issue for the client or the viewer of this, because that's actually our problem as coaches. So that's our issue to fix. The nutrition is the biggest area where things have changed for the client, the end user, and thus like the omnipresence or like immediate availability of food. Ordinarily, you're never more than 2 or 3 rooms away from a full fridge. Whereas if you're at work, largely that's not an option. You have to go and actually buy stuff. The biggest issues that I've been seeing with clients is it basically boils down to snacking a lot of the time, and snacking and a complete and utter lack of prep in some cases. Like they just felt like they could just wing it for a couple of days, and actually a couple of days of winging it can be fairly disastrous, as we both know. But certainly with snacking, I've been asking my clients, and this is one thing that I ask every client anyway, but we've gone over again during lockdown, is the identification of your hyperpalatable, your hyperhedonic foods. So we spoke yesterday about it's not as straightforward as just saying it's chocolate. It's not as straightforward as just saying it's crisps. You have to be as specific as possible. So I went on a bit of a rant about Jaffa cakes yesterday. We'll not bother going into it again, but effectively Jaffa cakes are that's my trigger food. And if I open a packet to have one, lol, it's never just one. It's like, is there 12 in a packet? I don't even know. I don't take the time to count. I'm not even mindful enough to pay heed to how many are in a tube. 12 or 14, I would imagine. Delicious, but unnecessary calories. There is 46 calories per Jaffa cake. You can do some serious damage quite quickly. So it's not biscuits, it's Jaffa cakes. It's not chocolate, it's like peanut M&Ms. And the more specific you can get in identifying those foods, the more you can identify either A, not having those foods in the house, or B, buying them in smaller single serving portions such that you actually have to open a second packet in order so you have an opportunity to break the habit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And you brought up a point there that kind of stuck in my head that I wanted to touch on, which I thought was really cool. Something that we didn't discuss yesterday is you said like the lack of prep. And I think that's one of the things that I'm noticing happening with some of my clients is, prior to all of this, we're all in structure and routine with work. If you're on a health and fitness journey, quote unquote, the likelihood is that you're prepping your lunch so that you're not making bad decisions when you're out at work, etc. So you're prepping your lunch. You probably got a good idea of what's going to be for dinner. Breakfast would be what it normally is, just simply because it's convenient and you're maybe in a bit of a rush state in the mornings. And now we remove that for a lot of people, and we're working from home or we're just on furlough or whatever. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't need to prep because I'm at home. So I'll just kind of make it up on the fly, and this ad libitum approach to eating, which works for a lot of people if you're experienced. Like I could eat ad libitum quite easily. I could not track calories for a week and be pretty much within maintenance calories if that was my goal, with a decent amount of protein. But for somebody who's maybe just starting or hasn't got a huge amount of experience, that ad libitum on the fly approach really can set you up for failure. And it's understanding that, yes, you might be at home now and you necessarily don't practically have to prep your meals or plan your meals because you can just kind of do it on the fly. If you are struggling with overeating, then it might be a good idea to consider that as an approach, because it will just give you some structure and routine back into your day. And often, having the foresight and planning ahead is far better than kind of trying to sort things out retrospectively. The big one is, oh, I ate this and then I checked the calories and thought, fuck, so having the foresight definitely helps.
I agree entirely. I think the point that you kind of touched on there that I would add is one thing that I've noticed before, but then I've noticed again during this sort of period, has been a kind of domino effect. So to continue on from what you were saying there, to prep your food, to prep your meals, it doesn't have to mean like prepping absolutely everything, but if you're used to prepping lunch, continue prepping lunch, staying in the habits that you're in. But what you'll find is that, again, kind of using a gateway analogy, the prepping of the meals may well be the gateway to continually training. It might be enough to be like, well, I've eaten well, so I feel like I want to train. On the flip side of that, I spoke to a client yesterday who went back to work this week, and his experience of like going back to work has, it seems significantly increased how he's eating. It significantly increased like his requirement for prep. And as a result of that, him eating better, he's now feeling like, well, I should absolutely be training a bit harder. He feels like he's just found that routine again, and nothing's really changed. Like going back to work, like working from home still. Yeah. He just has a routine, and I feel like people have broken so much of the routine that there's not even a semblance of what it was before. I think that's the fuck up, is not continuing to control every variable you have control of. People have just taken that ad lib, like, oh, I'll open the fridge and I'll just make lunch. It's like, you couldn't be trusted to do that before lockdown. What the hell do you think is going to happen during lockdown when the fridge is full? And then as a second point to that, I think as a social support scenario, which you and I obviously understand is a big issue for a lot of clients, especially when you have, say you have a male client, or it doesn't matter, it could be the other way around before any feminists jump on the bandwagon here. When if you have a male client and his missus isn't if he's on a weight loss journey and his missus isn't, she's still eating like a bit of a wanker at home. He's in the office all day long, so he's kind of like avoiding that until dinner time. So what we do is we save back a bit of calories so that when he comes home, he can enjoy dinner with the missus and it's not like this polarizing event. Yeah. Whereas in lockdown, we're now eating 3 meals a day together, probably. So now this social pressure from the other half comes in where it's like, maybe they're cooking ridiculous meals. Now you're not prepping. Now you're succumbing to these pressures and eating more shit. So I see that as a big risk for people as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously the large topic of what we're discussing here is, overcoming these fuck ups. So let's talk about some of the practicalities of actually, getting past these things.
Sure.
Sure, these things may happen and it can happen for a multitude of reasons, but what are some practical things that we can consider doing, either retrospectively to these things happening, or with the foresight of them happening to prevent it from happening, essentially?
So like for me, if we're going to stick with nutrition, for me, the thing I've been asking the majority of my clients to do is, like, if you're going to prep, fantastic. If you're not going to prep everything, I don't have a huge problem with that. I still need you to be organized though. And the solution for that to me is what I call proactive rather than reactive tracking using MyFitnessPal. You heard that here first, everyone. So sitting down on the sofa the night before and basically laying out a Hansel and Gretel trail for yourself for the next day, so that all you have to do is follow the instructions you laid out. So you know how you said there, sometimes you eat something and then you scan it and you're like, there was a lot of calories in that. We've all done it.
Yeah.
Like we're joking, but it does happen. Ultimately, if you can scan all the food, or at least plug all the food in the night before, I'm going to have that for breakfast, I'm going to have that for lunch, that for dinner, and here's my snacks. What you can do is you can sort of fuck around with the quantities, the proportions, maybe the actual foods themselves, until such time as you actually nail your macros. And then all you've got to do is get up in the morning and be like, oh, breakfast is that. Like it's like you've written your own meal plan. And let's be honest, everyone sits on the sofa before bed. Like, there's almost nobody who's not doing that. So it takes 10 minutes, but it removes choice. And I feel like choice is where the problem lies.
Yeah, definitely. Choice is one of those double-edged swords, isn't it? And it completely depends on the individual and how they respond to that choice. Like some people, and you'll be the same, you'll have people who come to you and just like, I work really well knowing exactly what I've got to do, like keep me in the confinements of those rules and those choices. And then other people, like, they need some autonomy. They need the ability to kind of have free play and make their own decisions. And like a lot of this that we're talking about ultimately comes down to having self-awareness of like what your crutches are, what your issues are, and what you struggle with, and being aware and then working around that. There's no point in kind of burying your head in the sand with what you ultimately struggle with. If you know that if you've got too much choice and too much free play, then give yourself some boundaries, and it's going to put you in the best position to succeed. And conversely, if you know that if you're confined by rigid constraints of you have to eat this, you can't eat that, or whatever, then give yourself options and maybe have a slightly more ad libitum approach. But yeah, self-awareness is massive. So we kind of touched on some of the nutritional things there. I guess the only thing that I would add to that is, if these fuck ups do invariably happen, and we're going to look at rectifying that retrospectively, so after it's happened, one thing that I would always say to my clients is, if we're trying to correct energy balance for the rest of the week, let's just say, for example, it's Wednesday, you've gone over by 800 calories that day, and you're thinking, shit, what have I done? I've kind of ruined it for the week or whatever. If we're trying to rectify that after that happening, not to try and make up those 800 calories immediately and just spreading that across the week, if that's your goal. So, right, I'm going to take 200 off tomorrow, 200 the day after that, and so on and so forth for the next 4 days. And then that would be the way that I would kind of approach that. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Matt.
That's a good point, Paul. I think I would add one thing to that. I said it pretty much sings in tune with that. So you and I doing something very similar. And like Ollie and I don't actually discuss this off air. We literally just pick a topic, have a few bits of chat, and then go for it. So there's a lot of synergy that just happens. So what the thing I ask my clients to do is the classic start and tracking your calories on a Monday. Everything, for some reason, everything in this industry starts on a Monday, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I ask my clients to start on a Friday, because if you go with the traditional Monday through Monday or Monday through Sunday model, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe not even Friday, you eat your calories, you nail your calories. Saturday and Sunday, you go a bit over, you're now fucked for the week. You've burst the week, right? Whereas if you start on a Friday counting your calories, and like even right now, people are still overeating a little bit on the weekend. I'm still seeing that on client diaries. And I program for it a lot of the time. I'll give them slightly higher calories at the weekend if that's something I see happening a lot. But if we just take all of that to one side and say that people generally overeat a little bit at the weekend, if that happens and you go a little bit over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, like you say, if the total overeating is about 1,000 calories, just taking the rest of the week, Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday, and just putting a little bit on off the top is far better than what I've witnessed people doing, where they're like, well, I overate by 500 calories, so I'm going to take that off tomorrow. That's a big old meal you've just sacrificed, and it's going to be shite, and it's going to actually probably counteract. It's probably going to act the opposite way on your overall nutrition. You'll be hungry and you probably crack.
Yeah. I mean, for guys and girls that I think can not handle it, that's probably the wrong way of putting it, but for guys and girls that I think can be disciplined enough to make these decisions themselves as well, what I have as a kind of foresight approach is I say that I want you to keep in mind that you can have like the calorie rollover approach. So the way that would look is, if you know that tomorrow you are going to have or you would like to have a slightly higher calorie day simply because you may be eating out lunch with family or whatever, just borrow calories or roll over calories to the next day. So the way that will look is, you'll have 10% up to 20% more calories that day, and just make sure that it comes off for the following day. And it's as simple as that. So foresight usually works better. Because quite often, if you're doing it retrospectively, you just think, fuck it, draw a line under it, it's done, I'll just crack on as normal. But if you physically make the effort to skim back prior to having slightly more food the next day, then it's kind of nipped in the bud nice and early, if that makes sense.
100%. I'm definitely making a Dale Winton triple calorie rollover meme after this. 100% expect to see that. I've had quite a few messages about Brian going in the bin, by the way, from people that I previously didn't follow. So
wicked.
Clearly,
good.
Brian has been hated up and down the country, which is fun. I like the fact we've got quite a spread of the country watching, and everyone's collectively thinks that Brian's a dick. So in the bin, mate. I think that. So then another thing I wanted to touch on whilst we were talking today was kind of like, maybe I don't even know if it turns into a discussion. I don't know, but I've been, as you know, I speak to my clients every single morning. We get together on Zoom, and all the time we'll just deal with a topic of psychology or mindset or even some sort of stoicism, whereby it's like I offer something that we maybe don't need to discuss in great detail on the call or indeed on this, but it's something to just put in the back of their head and let effervesce, and just kind of like just to think about and to kind of let it grow in your mind. So one of the things that I say to all of my clients, and it's like it's almost like an affirmation that I like them to have. And with regards to overcoming fuck-ups, the quote I ask them kind of to repeat to themselves is, I am the only problem I will ever have, and I am the solution. So the number of times that people will be like, I fucked it, I don't know what to do. You do know what to do. Yeah, the thing is, people do know what to do. I don't dispute they need some accountability to make it happen, but I need you to remember that no fuck up that happens, especially in lockdown, is bigger than your ability to solve it. I promise you, it's all solvable. That's a big one.
Massive. I love that, and that's something that I'll definitely use moving forwards. It's a cool way of looking at it, and again, that kind of raised a point for me where I just think there are going to be times where people are new to this and they make genuine mistakes. And I think from a coaching perspective, it's quite important that we don't discipline on that, because if it is a genuine mistake, if you can tell like this person's just new to tracking, or they just don't understand whatever it is that we're doing because it hasn't been explained to them enough at that point, then getting them to do things like shave off calories on subsequent days and stuff, it's just like, it's a bit harsh for somebody who is just learning. And I think in that situation, you can just say, look, it was a mistake. Let's draw a line under it. We now know moving forwards that, this is the case, and to consider that. So yeah.
100%, mate.
I guess one of the other things that we could probably touch on is training that people make fuck ups. Probably not as overtly obvious as when it comes to nutrition. When it's nutrition, it's like you fuck up because you've just eaten 12 donuts or whatever. But training, I'll have check-ins sometimes. It's like, look, I've had no motivation this week.
Yeah.
I've done 1 out of 5 of my sessions. I fucked up. That is a fuck up, because at the end of the day, if you want to be fit and healthy and strong, then you need to be doing your training right. So that one, I think, massively comes down to people putting too much weight and emphasis on motivation. So I don't know if you want to touch on like your thoughts on motivation and what we should be maybe focusing on more than motivation to achieve our goals.
I don't know if we'll differ here or not, because I've been giving my clients some very specific advice, but I'll talk about motivation first. So for me, motivation is a really fleeting thing. It's not something that I think people think. They look at maybe guys like you and I, and they're like, oh, wow, I wish I had motivation to train or eat like you guys. And I'll be honest with you, the motivation follows action is what I always say to clients. Like it's not something that I woke up with one day and I was like, oh, wow, I've got loads of motivation. You have to kind of get up and grab life by the balls to start with. And then once you've got it by the nutsack, you'll find that motivation comes knocking. But it's like, for example, for myself during lockdown, I've just taken to running 20 minutes in the morning. I know you do your movement. I go and do a couple of miles. And I'm not a big runner. I don't particularly enjoy running. But the motivation was never there to get out. And it's every day, there's not much in the way of motivation to go get out and run. But I get up, and once you go taking that first bit of action, you'll find that it quite quickly comes. In terms of how to crowbar the motivation into a training week, one of the things that I've been getting my clients to do is spreading the concentrational risk. So from my experience in engineering, when we had one big job in the Emirates for the entire office that was maybe worth 200 million, if we lost that job, everybody was fucked. Like, we'd all lost our jobs. Whereas if we had a school down south, a little hospital up here, and you had different jobs, we had a lot of concentrational risk. So if we lost one job, it probably wasn't the end of the world. So when it comes to training, a lot of my guys are like, I'm just going to train 3 times a week just now, like push, pull legs. And you're like, great, that's great. But if you miss one session, that's 33% of your sessions gone. So that's a big chunk. So we can spread that load. So for me, I've been asking the guys to increase training frequency and decrease training time. Yeah. So although that might be, it's not going to work for everybody, but for the vast majority, I'm experiencing it being quite a good thing. So I'm saying, give yourself permission to train for half an hour, set a timer, get through the first half hour of the workout I've programmed. If at the half hour timer, you're like, I'm done, then fine, you're done for the day. If not, some days you're going to find out you're in flow, and some days you're going to find out like, this training session is actually going much better than I thought. Like, I had a great one yesterday in the sunshine, so I was like, I'm just going to keep training. So half the time you're going to overdo it, other times you're just going to hit 30 minutes. If you do that 6 times a week, for me, that's a better and more sensible approach to motivating yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Something is better than nothing, you know. Again, I think it goes massively back to self-awareness and understanding in yourself. If you are struggling with motivation, especially with training at home at the minute, it's understandable, right? So if you're aware of that, then come up with a strategy, like you just said there, to not necessarily overcome that, but at least to facilitate it to some extent, you know, just to kind of offset the fact that you may have days where you don't want to do stuff. 100%. You know, having that in place is awesome, and that's not something that I'd actually considered. So that's really cool. And again, one of the things that you kind of touched on at the beginning there is you said that motivation comes after action, and people get that the wrong way around. You know, it's like, oh, I need to be motivated for me to go and do something. No. The other way around, you do something that motivates you then to do more. You know, when you start seeing results, when you start seeing the success that you're ultimately looking for, that will in turn motivate you more and more and more. And then soon, you know, when you're consistent enough for long enough, you won't require motivation because you have such ingrained habits and routines that, you know, your daily actions are just almost habitual. They just happen on autopilot, you know. And I don't need to wake up, put my feet on the floor after waking up and think, fuck, I really want to go and do some movement and some cold showers right now, and then go and train and follow a diet. I'm not motivated to do that shit, but it's just ingrained, you know.
I think that's a really good point. It's something that I wanted to say was that I'm not speaking for you here. I think you've just done a good job of articulating exactly what I wanted to say was, I wanted to go on record that I struggle with motivation during lockdown to train as well. Like I'm not over here saying this has been a cruisy training block for me. It's been tricky. I've got through it, and I'm still continuing to train pretty hard. But most days, I really can't be fucking bothered. Like I don't want to train at home because the enjoyment I have isn't the same as the enjoyment from the gym. That's fine, granted. So an analogy that I offer to clients that was offered to me for my training was, I can't remember where I learned it or where I heard it. It's an analogy about a tennis court and a tennis player. So the tennis player had a weak backhand, but had a really good forehand, right? Really, really good forehand. Enjoyed practicing it and training it. Really hated training backhand. Gets to practice. Coach says, "Right, dude, we're gonna train you backhand today." And I'm like, fuck's sake, they don't want to do that. Like, and there's a bit of an argument, like whatever, right? Okay, so the coach is switched on, says, "Tell you what, let's do 20 minutes of forehand just now. So let's start with your forehand." So they do forehand. Once they've done 20 minutes of forehand, the players in flow, the players enjoying, they've had something that they wanted before they got what they needed, which was the backhand. So I say to clients, and I've been purposeful in programming clients during this time, to front load sessions with something that I know the client enjoys. So for me, and most guys, see if I do a bit of arms at the start of a session, if I just go out and get a bicep pump, and I'm like, right, cool, I've got a bit of a pump, I've trained my arms, now I'm like, I'll train any part of my body to like with relentless intensity. Once I've done something I want to do.
Yeah. I love that.
Outside in the Corona slip drop is not high on my agenda.
Mate, just while that's fresh and hot, I need to interject there because that's such a cool concept. And there'll be people that are listening to this who are, we've spoken about these guys and they're in the bin already. They're the kind of they're the PubMed readers who like, and they'll say something along the lines of, well, that's not going to be most optimal for progress across the board because you're going to be pre-fatiguing ancillary muscle groups and just all this shit, right? But the reality is, especially when we're dealing with general population clients or people who maybe just do have fleeting motivation, as many of us do, giving them a lot of what they want and some of what they need is going to be really, really important for adherence and their ability to actually apply themselves to the plan. So even taking something like that and taking an idea like that and applying that to your nutrition as well. If nutrition is where you're falling down, then make sure you're programming in things that you really enjoy. Is it going to be most optimal? Potentially not. However, if it means that you can adhere to the plan across the week, across the months, and for the longer term, then that's going to serve you far better than following something that you really fucking hate and you can't stick to. So again, self-awareness. I enjoy this. I don't enjoy that. Right. Let's program the stuff that we enjoy, a bit of what we want, a lot of what we need. And that's a large basis of what I, focus on with my programming. And I'm sure you're the same.
100%. Give them what they want, and then once you've got them, give them what they want, hit them with what they need, because at that point you've got a buy-in. They're like, okay. I mean, I've done 10 minutes of arms. I'm all right to do anything now. I think the same goes for nutrition, like you say. I actually picked up on the equivalent in nutrition. I didn't even realize the parallels until you were speaking there. Before I got my PT qualification, I went through absolutely all of Phil Lerney's seminars, like all of them. I wasn't even a PT. It was just a guy that liked training. And he was explaining how he gave an example of a hypothetical client who ate a Snickers every single day. And he sort of asked the room to review the diet, and everyone was like, well, they're eating a fucking Snickers every day. And everybody becomes almost like tunnel vision in on it being a bad thing. And he kind of gave more context and layered it on top and said, well, what if I told you this, this, and this? Effectively, that Snickers allowed them not to binge, allowed them not to eat more shit. So although it's suboptimal on paper and it appears suboptimal, it's what they want. And actually that Snickers actually could in many ways become one of the most healthy and important parts of their diet. So it's that prejudging things like that. Oh, you're pre-exhausting ancillary muscles. You're wasting energy. You should always program the parts you really want to focus on, and you bring it up at the start of a session. Yes, in optimal conditions. Yes, in the gym. And in some cases, no, not in optimal conditions. In some cases, I've got clients that don't even. They have really shit legs, but they really hate training legs. So I'm not going to program them an hour and a half's worth of like absolute savagery. I'm just going to make sure I give them something that they want. Go in and get a bicep pump, mate.
Yeah.
Chuck the BFR straps on. Get inflate your arms, and then then let's rock and roll. So yeah, I'll leave that there.
Yeah, no, it's massive. I mean, I get not questions all the time. You know, it's like when people say I get questions all the time. It's like I've had two questions.
Loosely translates to one person once.
One person once. But like, you know, I've had questions over the years as to how do you stay motivated? How do you, you know, and it's largely due to the fact that I make sure that I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd far rather have an approach that I thoroughly enjoy than an approach that's super, super optimal. I look at guys, and obviously, you know, people put their best foot forward on social media and you don't really know what people are getting up to behind closed doors. But I look at some guys and girls and I just think, fuck, man, you are a machine. You are just so rigid with every aspect of your training, your nutrition, absolutely everything. And it's admirable, but it's also, it doesn't appeal to me. You know, like for me, life is far more important than just training, just nutrition.
Okay.
I want to have a life that I enjoy, and that's multifaceted. That's dependent on a lot of things: the food that I'm eating, the company that I have, absolutely everything, right? But I want to also look and feel confident as well. So, you know, taking that into consideration, I'm not going to have this optimal bodybuilding approach to looking after myself. It just doesn't appeal to me, you know. So just be really, I think I just say to people, just be really aware of what the goal is for you. If the goal for you is to look good and feel confident, you don't need to have this super rigid approach.
It's going to ram down your throat on social media as well, because, well, maybe not so much ram down your throat. It's just where people choose to follow. Like, obviously, you're going to follow your pro bodybuilders. You're going to follow your, even not even your pros, even your Callums. I mean, like, you watch Callum and the guy's a fucking machine. Like, literally, like, I don't even understand how he manages to do what he does so relentlessly.
Yeah.
A lot of people, you know, for me, for a lot of my clientele, I've written at length about this on Instagram, and I've also written a few articles for other people on it, in terms of when coaches are programming the forgotten variables, what I've repeatedly called it. We'll look at reps, we'll look at sets, we'll look at tempo, we'll look at like all kinds of fancy fuckery. You know, we're putting in RP, we're putting in cluster sets, we're putting in muscle rounds, you name it. You know, we're considering all these things, but we don't necessarily consider enjoyability. And that for me is the forgotten variable, because none of this, with the exception of people who actually want to pursue a career in it, and or compete at the absolute upper level, none of this should come at the expense of your fucking enjoyment. Like, you're doing it through choice. Like, don't forget this. Unless you are competing or this is your job, this is your hobby. And that was one of the biggest things I kind of feared when I moved into the industry, was turning my hobby. I don't know about you, turning my hobby into a job. I was like, am I going to resent training?
Yeah, that's a kind of a pessimistic way of looking at it, but I do know what you mean. I had that feeling as well. But like, ultimately, like you, and again, I'm not going to tell anyone what they should and shouldn't be doing, but you should be doing what you love, or you should at least be trying to, you know. And you and I are both incredibly passionate about this, and not only just the health and fitness aspect, but the business aspect, the helping people aspect, how rewarding that is, and that's ultimately why we're here. But dude, I feel like we've got massively off topic. I can't even remember what the name of this episode is.
Overcoming fuck ups.
We weren't talking about that.
Well, that's how we roll. Like, this is what I was saying. Like, we could script these guys. I feel like if we scripted them, they would be a little bit more dry, and I'll probably be a little bit more boring. And actually, the feedback I've had so far has been that people are actually quite enjoying the, like, they sit down with a cup of coffee and they maybe don't even watch, they just listen.
Yeah.
And that suits me.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Was there anything else that you wanted to go over, or are you happy with that?
No, I'm happy. I'm gonna, like, I've been saving a bit of a quote for the end of it that I figured would be a nice way to kind of like leave with another thing to chuck in the back of your mind. One of these things that goes back there and you kind of leave it there and does what it does. And it's, I put it on my Instagram this week, and it's something that I spoke to my clients about probably about a month ago. And that is, perseverance isn't about believing you won't give up until you win. It's about believing that you won't give up when you lose. And I think that pretty much sums up today's, or at least intended, this topic that we had today, which is people's idea of perseverance as a dogmatic approach to winning. And it can be that, but I think for me, it's more of an optimistic and realistic, pragmatic approach to losing, and understanding how to have it. Again, Ollie said it several times during this call, like the personal awareness. Like, do you know what I mean? Of just being aware of what's going on and understanding that, like we started with at the start of the call, falling up, understanding that these mistakes aren't the undoing of your hard work. They're stepping stones to a better version of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And each of them is a lesson. I think if you can, I know it sounds very wishy-washy, it sounds very like, listen to you, the modern day stoic, shut the fuck up kind of approach. But if you do let that sink in, that quote, I think there's a lot in it, certainly for me.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Wicked. I'm going to expect one of those fucking awesome quotes at the end of every episode now.
Stoicism with the muscle mindset coach.
Awesome, man. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and watching this episode. I've just realized we haven't put anything in the bin in this episode. Do we need to put anything in the bin?
I mean, it's an essential part of the show.
We had something on yesterday's brief discussion, but I can't remember exactly what it was.
I'm going to just say, before it's too late, that yesterday, Ollie put out a banger of a quote just before everything went dreadfully wrong. You don't know where I'm going with this yet.
No.
Just before everything went dreadfully wrong with the laptop, Ollie has made a quote about sailing. Do you want to hit us with it?
About sailing. Oh, yes. Yeah. What were we talking in context to? Oh, I was talking. So basically, the discussion was going along the lines of people making mistakes, people fucking up. Yeah. And then we just basically left it as good sailors aren't made on calm seas.
That's it.
So fuck ups are great because they're learning experiences. And as long as you can change your perception on that and you can see them for what they are, you're able to not let them kind of, get you bogged down. And you can learn from those and move forwards, then you're better equipped for these challenges in the future. So, yeah.
100%. I thought it was a banger, and I wanted to make sure that you got that in because it was important yesterday and it's important now. And I think if you look at anybody, no matter what it is you're looking to achieve, whether that be bodybuilding, whether that be business, whether that be PT, doesn't fucking matter. The people who are doing really, really well all have a series of trials and tribulations that they're happy to tell you about. They've gotten to where they're at. It's never like, oh yes, I just started this business and now it's worth 4 million, or oh, I just started bodybuilding and now I'm on the biggest stage. It never in any context. So the sailing analogy is key, and it also opened a potential opportunity for me to bring up Captain Birdseye, which is now being heavily manufactured.
You've pre-planned this to a T.
Oh my, like. Taking notes, Captain Birdseye must be in tomorrow's episode. Yeah, I was going to do it, but I feel like it's manufactured now, and it's not fair. But I just wanted to point out that I was willing to go there yesterday, and that good sailors might not be built on calm seas, but you try sailing on rough seas when you've got 51 children that aren't yours on board and a treasure trove of fish fingers loaded with GHB. Now all of a sudden. That's it. I mean, he's obviously a master sailor. Master seaman.
Master seaman. I haven't got visions. I'm not going to say that because that would be very wrong of me, but I'm just imagining young children with tiny, I'm going to save it for after the call, but it involves breadcrumbs.
Right. Well, on that, we have to end the call because I'm almost crying and I need to speak to Ollie to get the rest of this. Thank you for joining. We shall see you next time. Thank you for joining. See you later. Bye.